Hello and welcome back to the last session of this year's Stream TV Advertising Summit, brought to you by Fierce Video. My name is Oliver Ward, your host. As always, a big thank you to this year's sponsors, TiVo, Broadpeak, Beachfront, Vivo and Canoe Ventures for their support of the event. Here's what to expect from our final session, Ad Engineering, Insertion, Frequency and Viewer Experience. Kicking us off, we'll have our partner keynote by Olivier Karra from Broadpeak. Then at 2:15 Eastern Time, we will have our final panel discussion moderated by Jason Thibault from Streaming Video Alliance, and with speakers joining from Tastemade, Vivo, and Vizio. Be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A tab and also to check out the Partner Content Hub for any free content provided by our partners. So without any further ado, let's get started with our final session. Olivier, over to you.
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. I'm very pleased to be part of this session. We're very excited to be part of the discussion. So quick introduction, my name is Olivier Karra. I'm working for Broadpeak as a marketing director for cloud and SaaS solutions, more specifically looking after the Broadpeak.io video API SaaS platform. So with that being said, what I would like to do today is really share our perspective on the targeted ad application in general, and more specifically market trends. So really sharing our experience and share our expertise, our perspective on this specific topic. So before we dive into, I would say, some of the core discussion, I thought it would be useful to step back for a minute and put ourselves in the shoes of a publisher who would either, I would say, start into this business of targeted advertisement, or maybe for a publisher already operating that kind of service, move further into, I would say, optimization in this case. And in both cases, you see, as reflected on this slide, that this is not something which is straightforward. And I think this is reflecting some of the complexity of the advertisement technology stack ecosystem. And if we really look at the end-to-end workflow from the advertiser standpoint till the publisher or even till the end user client, we see that there is a significant number of options and the choices that can be made depending on what priorities need to be considered. But maybe before we move forward, if I had to pick, I would say, two important themes that any publisher should, I would say, think about before really going into this business or going further. I would say the first thing I would pick really is related to, of course, revenue, and more specifically ad impressions. And our observation on the market today is that we see that more and more attention is being put on the quality rather than quantity. And this is something which is slowly but surely happening, and which is impacting, I think, the end-to-end ecosystem. And it's also, by the way, very much aligned with some of the discussions which took place, for instance, at the IAB Tech Summit a few months ago. We saw the notion of attention measurement being raised, and it's again showing that there is a need or expectation or concern from the advertiser to go just beyond straight ad impressions in general. And maybe the second point I would raise in terms of awareness at this stage for, again, any publisher considering moving into this business is the one of time to market. I think we are in an industry where which is transforming extremely fast. And we really think that the days where you could spend up to a year or at least 6 months to make a POC, do some validation, do some testing, maybe do some pre-production deployment and so on and so forth are completely over. Today, being late, 1 month late on a business plan can be something extremely critical. And what I want to say is that the time to market is even more valuable, even more important in this kind of situation. So that was a short introduction. I want to move forward with the time left that I have, and make it to make it a bit more a bit easier to understand, and to make it more concrete. We thought that sorting out, I would say, some of the core capabilities in the way it is shown, which is shown on this slide, would be helpful. So what you can see here is a set of capabilities that we have sorted in 2 dimensions, or at least one, which is really the client side versus server side approach. And in the other dimension, you see 2 key capabilities, which are themselves including other features which are quite essential. And this is why we're highlighting them here on this slide. And this is really meant to give some perspective on what is important to consider in terms of capabilities for anyone building a strategy to monetize an ad inventory at some point in stage. So first point is that this is by no means a comprehensive list. We just picked a few capabilities that we thought would be really relevant, really important for that kind of application. That's the first point I wanted to mention. The list, of course, is much longer than that, but this is really a core, I would say, subset. And the second point I want to make upfront is I'm not trying to basically oppose, I would say, server side versus client side. We know that both technologies are widely deployed in the field, and they each have their pros and cons and set of benefits. And in fact, in the case of the ad tracking features that you see underneath, what is interesting is that combining, I would say, server side and client side at different stages can be extremely interesting, and they each bring a different set of benefits depending on what kind of context you are into, or at what phase of your strategy you are basically positioned. But if I take, so let's zoom now on the ad insertion capabilities, if you will. If you look at the top layer, you will see here that there is something obvious, which is, I would say, highlighted throughout this matrix, is the fact that in the client-side world, that's something which is really straightforward and widely deployed, as I said. In most cases, things are, of course, operational, but there is, because of the market trend that we see and the move towards, I would say, programmatic, there is a direct impact, which is really the fact of being exposed to ad creatives which might not fit to the quality of the streaming service itself. And this is a growing risk, which is impacting, I would say, any kind of client-side deployment or implementation. And this is exactly one of the benefit that you get with the server side. On the other hand, you see that happening, for instance, for the creative preparation, for the creative verification. All these capabilities are extremely useful in this case, because from the very early stage, a publisher can basically decide with that kind of technology whether an ad creative should be, I would say, inserted or replaced within the content itself. Again, this is not something critical at this stage for anyone doing, I would say, direct sales, but as you move towards more programmatic approaches with unknown creatives formats or quality, this is something that I think is important to control as early as possible, I think, in the chain. So this is exactly what I'm trying to show here. And you see we have grouped, I would say, capabilities together, and you can very much see that one of the main difference between server side and client side is this control you have on the quality of experience for the publishers who are going in this direction. Again, there are some dependencies to other factors, but in general, this is something which is really becoming more and more, I would say, impactful. There is another important, I would say, theme or dimension, which is the one of the monetization. And you see here that the ad tracking is really being key in this matter. So what we find very interesting is that for a publisher who would want to go to market very quickly, and potentially maybe without having control of the end user application, the server side ad tracking is something which is really meaningful and which brings that fast time to market, simply because there are much less dependencies to device fragmentation, for instance, at least for that situation. Having said that, for any publisher who has already gone beyond that stage, and to the contrary, who is trying to go much further in terms of revenue optimization, ROI, and so on and so forth, moving from a server-side ad tracking to a client-side ad tracking is definitely something which is going to boost that kind of capability, simply because it's going to give much deeper insights with much sharper, I would say, analytics. And that's basically where the value is building up. And this is how I would say a publisher can better monetize the ad inventory that is being at stake here. So again, just to summarize this experience and those observations that we're seeing on the market, there are different combinations, different approaches, which are really key to understand when building a strategy for optimizing an ad inventory for any publisher. And they can be very complementary to each other. It really depends on really what matters most at what stage from that standpoint. I'm going to stop here and maybe take, I think we are running out of time, so I'll just take one question that I see coming up. So basically the question is around the innovation that we see in this kind of application. The one innovation I think which is really also impacting, I would say, the monetization is really around ad fraud. We haven't had time to talk much about that, but for instance, the capability to fingerprint ad creatives all the way from where they're produced down to the end user is something that we see as a future innovation that could bring a lot of value to fight against ad fraud. This is just one example, but we thought it would be useful to share it with the audience. Thank you for listening. It was a pleasure to share that feedback with the audience.
Thank you, Olivier. That was great. Next up, we have our panel discussion moderated by Jason Thibault. Jason, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Afternoon and welcome to the last session. This is going to be exciting. We've got a great group of panelists to talk about ad monetization and the ad experience. So I'm Jason Thibault. I'm the executive director of the Streaming Video Technology Alliance. We've actually recently rebranded to focus entirely, make sure that the industry understands we're focused entirely on technology challenges and solving those challenges. What I want to do now is I want to let our panelists introduce ourselves before we jump into questions. So let's start off with Kristen. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ardley. I am the Programmatic Account Director here at Tastemade. I'm responsible for key programmatic partnerships, strategy, and revenue growth across Tastemade's global streaming networks.
Awesome. Natalie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Gabathuller-Scully. I am SVP of Revenue and Distribution Operations at Vivo. We're the world's leading music video network. Thanks for having me.
Very cool. And last but not least, Travis.
Hey, I'm Travis Hockersmith. I head up our platform revenue teams and operation teams. So basically everything that makes the ads business go at Vizio. We've been building out the Vizio ads business for the past 3 years or so. Great partners with both Tastemade and Vivo. So we're kind of a distribution platform.
Fantastic. All right. So let's start out with, sort of a high level question. I know that, as we start talking about ad insertion into streaming video, we sometimes tend to forget that the ads are as much of the experience in watching the video as the content itself. And so, what happens when that ad experience goes bad? And I'll give you just an example, like what happens, how do people feel when all of a sudden they're watching a, 1080p high def video and the ads pop in and they're SD quality? What does that do to the viewer? What does that do to the general viewing experience? Maybe Kristen, maybe you can start us out with that.
Sure. It's a great question. And it's definitely something that's always top of mind for everyone here at Tastemade. I can tell you on any given day, my boss, our CEO, our content team, our ad tech team, we are watching our streams on different distribution platforms, whether it be Samsung or Vizio, and reporting back if they see these types of issues, because protecting the user experience is really at the core of everything we do here at Tastemade. They may seem like minor issues. However, if we deliver poor quality ads, like ads with no frequency capping, ads that buffer, ads with questionable messaging, and my personal favorite, ads with elevated sound that are much louder than the content, we run the risk of losing that viewer indefinitely. Our content and marketing team have worked very, very, very hard to bring to our streaming network. And it's so easy for a viewer to change the channel. And viewers literally have thousands and thousands of options these days when it comes to what they watch. And if they have a bad experience with our brand, they have plenty of other places to go, and it's really hard to get them back. On top of that, bad ad experiences not only cheapen our brand, they cheapen the perception of the brand that's advertising. An example, I was car shopping last year, and though I wasn't considering this particular brand to purchase, I still remember a time I was watching Handmaid's Tale years ago, years ago, I think, and I'd received ad after ad after ad for a particular car brand where the ads didn't render correctly. And clearly they had no frequency capping in place. And that association has still stuck with me years later. So those are the type of ways that it can impact both us as a publisher and perception of the brand.
And I want to get back to that concept of ad frequency in a little bit. But Natalie or Travis, do you guys have any thoughts on this as well about sort of what happens to that experience when the ads are bad?
I think Kristen said it really. Oh, can you hear me? I think Kristen said it really well. There is so much choice out there that if us as publishers and content providers don't get it right out the gate, we very quickly lose those users that we've worked so hard to bring to our platforms and our content. That, content and ads go hand in hand in our view, and we take the same approach. We're constantly scrutinizing our frequency, the ad quality, the ad delivery of our fast channels or our VOD platforms across all of the endpoints to make sure that we've got the best experience out for the user as well as for the brands who are advertising with us.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think we hit on it. It's for the content owners and publishers, it's about viewer churn. There's a lot of options out there, and retaining viewers is of critical importance. And a bad ad experience can help contribute to viewer churn. And then for brands, they're spending a lot of money in CTV at a relatively high CPM with the expectation of brand performance. poor ad quality is not going to drive the brand performance that they're paying for.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, right? And I'll make a shameless plug for the organization. We have an advertising working group, and they had actually produced a document of best practices for really encoding and producing ads for streaming video, and it talked a lot about ensuring quality and cacheability and all that stuff. So I think the industry definitely recognizes, and all of you reflected that quality of ads is important. It's not just throw the ads out there, no big deal. I definitely have the experience of watching an ad 13 times, across 6 different ad pods in an hour-long show, and just going like, I'm never buying that product ever. Like I can never watch another ad by that company again. Which leads me to this next question, and maybe Natalie, you can start us off here. But what are the biggest challenges with the ad experience today? Is it just ad frequency? Is it ad quality? Is it errors with ads? And really, sort of, what do brands need to keep in mind to promote a good ad experience?
I think it's all of the above, to be honest with you. We laugh, but it's true. I think, brands need to partner with those premium publishers like Vivo or, Vizio and Tastemade here who are actively focused on ensuring the best experience for the users by managing issues like ad frequency, category exclusivity within pods, proper creative requirements. All of these things help make a better ad experience. And for publishers, it should be table stakes that you're constantly focused on this, constantly improving your experience for the users and for the brands.
Kristen, any thoughts?
Yeah, just echoing, what she said. All of those issues are huge, and issues our industry is facing. When I think about it, in terms of what a brand really needs to keep in mind too, promoting a good ad experience, I'd say one thing that we discuss a lot, whether it be internally or with our partners or with brands, is the need to provide relevant ads to the users, or making the ad relevant to the content that the user is watching. That would be my number one recommendation, kind of outside of ad frequency and errors. Users are starting to get really smart about their ad experiences. Probably not as smart or aware as everyone on this call or on this panel, but they do notice when they're served an ad that's completely irrelevant for them. I see friends share all of the time on social media when they get served a ridiculous, whether it be a social media ad or a CTV ad. And one of the beautiful things about CTV versus traditional linear is that brands have this plethora of data about their audience. So use that audience to make ads make sense for the viewer. It makes the ad impactful, but not necessarily disruptive, and make sure not to serve it to them 25 times in a row.
No, and that's a really good point. And Travis, I kind of want to follow up with this question. I want to give you a chance to weigh in as well, but I also want to talk, since you're at the device side, and there is a big push, like with OR, to really create an addressable contextual advertising solution for devices. But first, let's talk a little bit, see if you've got any thoughts on, what these big challenges are today in the ad experience. And then let's talk a little bit about, how you guys see technology coming into play to improve the ad experience on connected TVs.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that was just touched on for the past few minutes is obviously frequency. And I think one of the big challenges as it pertains to frequency is that there are a lot of different streaming environments that brands are investing in, and those buys aren't necessarily coordinated. They have no way of necessarily understanding, even if you set a frequency cap at 3, if a viewer is getting a 3 frequency in app A, a 3 frequency in app B, and a 3 frequency in app C, to the viewer, that's 9 ads. And that's a fairly common occurrence. So one of the ways that we solve for that, since we do sit at the device level, is through our ACR data, we can detect the number of times the ad hits the glass independent of the input or independent of the app that the ad is being served through. We can then count the number of ad exposures, and for the portion of the ad buy that runs through Vizio Ads, we can respect what we refer to as a universal frequency. And we will not serve ads for the portion of the buy that we control once we've detected the ad hitting a universal frequency cap at the glass level. The other way that brands can utilize this type of capability too is something that we call true incremental reach. Exact same technology, but what we can say is that we will only serve an ad if that ad's not been detected at the glass level on any other input or on any other app. So it's a unique way of being able to solve a fairly acute pain point that you really have to control the device level to be able to solve for.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, I mean, and that's a great addition to that question, right? So understanding, that you guys are doing things at the device level that can't necessarily be done across all of the properties, and so that's really interesting to hear. I mean, I think, publishers in general, brands in general, would love to understand and have a sense of uniformity across all of their channels, especially as they're doing, omni-channel distribution of campaigns. But what about in terms of what Kristen was talking about in terms of context and addressability? What is Vizio doing at the time right now to improve that ad experience so that users get, honestly, ads that make sense for them?
Yeah, it all ties back to our ACR data as well. So the vast majority of campaigns that run on our platform are using some sort of ACR targeting. Examples of that could be people who watch a specific genre of content, people who watch the NFL, people who watch a particular program on network TV, whatever the case may be. We can customize these audiences based on the objectives of the advertiser. But that allows us to understand the context in which people have seen ads previously, or the type of content environments that they're most attracted to, and then target ads into similar environments. We can also do things like if somebody watched a prior episode of a show, run a promotion for an upcoming episode of the show. For people who have not seen an ad, serve them an ad. I gave that example already, but contextual relevance is something that's enhanced tremendously, we believe, by ACR targeting, because we're targeting based on context, based on historical context.
Natalie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we take a similar approach. We have products like moods, packages, and things where we work with advertisers to tie them to the moods of a video. We use AI and machine learning's data to bring those relevant contextual targeting groupings together for our advertisers to target against in this environment. We also, go on the genre level. We have many fast channels that we've launched across multiple platforms, which are 70s channel, 80s channel. They're niche channels that target a specific audience in the market that is very relevant for specific advertisers that we work with to tie our buys together. And our content is always professionally produced, brand safe content. So we always provide that extra layer of that brand safe quality in those environments when we look at our advertising and our sales in that way.
Yeah, and when we start talking about the success of monetization, so that's really what ads are, right? It's all about successfully delivering the ad and then successfully viewing it. And I know that publishers and content platforms contractually agree to what's considered a view, what percentage of the video needs to be watched, in terms of a completed impression or a completed view. And so that's like one part of the experience, is to preserve the ad experience so that the users don't flee and churn, because if they churn, then there's less impressions to sell and then there's less ad revenue for the platform. On the technical side, though, there's always that problem of we'll just call it the black screen of death, right? So you're watching this video and it transitions to an ad and it's just blank, right? Or there's some placeholder there that pops up that says has some brand logo on it, like, we're ESPN, we'll be back. And you're like, well, was that an ad failure? What happened there? So, Kristen, maybe you can start us off on this a little. I want to turn to the complications of the ad tech stack, because it is complicated, and where the errors most frequently occur, that maybe you guys are seeing, and then obviously Natalie and Travis jump into that. And then how can brands prevent, these ad errors from happening so that they're not having, so the platform operator is not having to resell impressions or repromise impressions out of like next month's pool?
Sure. Common issues that we see on the publisher side would include things like hops, latency, mismatched ads because of incorrect settings, not having the right frames per second, trackers that clients add are broken or not secure, which cause upstream errors. There's just so many things that feel like can go wrong. I think the bottom line, for brands is they need to be tight around specs, which can be challenging, especially in this CTV OTT market, because we lack standardization, right? It's new. But CTV has specific specs that you need to adhere to if you want your ads to serve correctly. So instead of repurposing online video creatives, be purposeful, and brands need to be purposeful in the creation of their CTV assets, as this is usually a big reason for errors or timeouts. I can't tell you how many times we get sent, just as an example, VPaid assets instead of fast. So net, CTV is a different environment with different rules and different requirements. So brands, they should not assume that what works for web, what works for video will then translate and work for CTV.
Natalie, thoughts?
No, I agree. I think the brands need to work with the publishers or the programmatic partners that they're working with to understand the specs for, the endpoints that they're delivering against, to provide the right creative for execution, because I think that's key as well. I think that's one of the things we see often is, incorrect tag or anything like that in the creative that can crash that, and then you end up with the blank screen. I think on the publisher side, it's all about that relationship between the ad server and the SSAI partner to make sure that that is in lockstep, constantly working properly. You're having those QA checks on a regular basis to make sure that you're at optimal performance to minimize any other issues that could happen.
I'm just going to say you're secretly an operations person at heart. That was fantastic. Travis, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, beyond the technical and creative alignment, which we've been talking about, there's a number of other reasons that we see are common for why a particular brand fails to deliver ads. Like data targeting is very common, making sure that the data targeting is set up properly, that it's set up against a large enough subset of TVs to be able to deliver the campaign at the volumes that the advertisers are looking for. Same with geo-targeting. Are the geo-targets set properly? Are they too tight? That kind of thing. Block lists in the ad server, making sure that there isn't too tight or too narrow a block list so that you're delivering where you want to deliver. We oftentimes have campaigns under delivering and accidentally something was added to the block list that shouldn't have been there. And then you get into the economics. Prioritization occurs based on, especially in this programmatic ecosystem, the CPM that the advertiser is willing to pay. So oftentimes, if an advertiser is not bidding with a high enough CPM to warrant a priority placement within the waterfall, ad delivery is going to struggle. And then also things like competitive separation. When we're piecing together ad pods in real time, there's a lot of logic that goes into making sure that the ad pod makes sense in its entirety. Competitive separation is certainly part of that. So making sure that logic is set up properly at the onset of a campaign or at the integration of a channel or an app. So those are some of the long laundry lists of troubleshooting steps that we go through when a brand is saying, hey, I'm not delivering as many impressions as I had budgeted for or anticipated.
No, and it's really funny when you think about, streaming video, like the idea of streaming video, the targeting you can do and the contextual relevance is really exciting for advertisers. Like, wow, I can get down to like, this person is this age, lives here, watches this, does that, shops there. Oh my gosh, I can target an ad. But it's so complicated to get the ad to that person. Like when you think back to broadcast television, you had a Tandberg Black Arrow box. It was slotted into your broadcast gear, and it just handled all the ad delivery. It was local and national. And you were like, yeah, I don't have to think about it. It's really kind of funny. But anyway, I'm sorry, I was reminiscing. One thing I kind of want to get out of the way, I think we came to a topic that might need a little explanation. And Kristen, you actually called it out, which was CTV versus OTT. And at the core of everything, of course, is streaming video and the technologies to deliver streaming video. But if you could just kind of talk a little bit, how is CTV different than OTT from an advertising perspective?
I'm just trying to think. There's so many different ways people define this. I'm just trying to think of how I look at it. Here at Tastemade, we typically operate in the fast. Most of our streaming networks are across fast networks, which have their own set of complexities, issues. So that's if you're on Vizio or you're on Samsung and you go to Samsung TV Plus and you can locate our channel. We have very little in terms of video on demand, but what we do, the setup for whether it's a programmatic partner or on our direct side, the experience is very different. And the way we partner actually with different partners is very different from VOD to CTV. So I'm not sure if I answered that question.
Well,
but
and everyone else can weigh in. I know that, again, this is, I think the reason when you touched on it, was like, oh, we have to talk about this, because I do believe there's a lot of confusion from an advertising perspective about the differences between these two things, if there are any.
It's really, it is. Oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
In some areas, I think of them as similar but different. I think, and Kristen, I think you started it really well. Is like there's the fast channel space, which I look at as like the connected television landscape, where Vivo itself, similar to Tastemade, has many fast channels that we distribute across multiple distribution endpoints like Samsung and those. And then we also have a VOD platform that we have available, which I would look at as, being in areas like Roku and all of those, which are a little different, but the same sort of in our look. When we market it, it's all connected television in the market. It all is reaching the same user base. We are seeing the same outcomes from time spent on these platforms, and the opportunities for connecting brands with advertisers, advertisers with content in a way that is new and exciting in this sort of lean back environment. And so to me, I think they have different answers, but they very much equal the same thing, I think, out in the market on what we're trying to show and what we're trying to offer to brands.
Absolutely. Travis, since you guys are at the device, you are a connected TV.
Yeah, you are, yes.
Yeah. I mean, as a distribution platform, our philosophy is that we want to have all the content. whatever content our viewers, the people who buy Vizio TVs, want to watch, we want to make available. We want to make discovery as seamless as possible to get to the content that you want to watch as quickly as possible. And that means that we have to have a wide variety. We have a lot of fast content on our platform. we have a lot of on-demand content on our platform. Obviously, a lot of people use Vizio TVs and any other branded TVs to still consume linear TV. So we want to make however someone wants to watch content as accessible as possible. Now, from an advertising perspective, we have to think through the right technical framework to deliver ads into each of these environments as efficiently as possible. The way that we deliver ads into FAST is slightly different than the way that we deliver ads into on-demand content, and it's certainly very different than the way that we serve ads into a linear digital addressable environment. So we have the ability to swap out linear ads in real time, but the tech infrastructure that needs to be in place to make that happen is fundamentally different than the infrastructure that takes place to make a fast ad pod come together.
Yeah, it's actually, I think you guys, all three of you have done a very good job of sort of exploding this out, right? That there are different modalities for consuming digital content. So let's just start there, right? We went from broadcast, which was what was delivered via QAM, right, to stuff that's delivered digitally. So now you have IPTV, and then you have OTT, and then you have FAST, which is really a linear, pseudo-linear version of OTT. And then you have purely live events, right, that happen at a very specific time and are a very specific window. And you're right, they all require a different understanding of ad tech in order to be able to deliver, once again, a really good ad experience for that modality. And this actually leads right into the next question, right? So Travis, you touched on it, thinking differently about how do I get ads into these different modalities? What are the decision-making points, right? So, and I'll just focus on two of them. Let's just talk about two of them: client side ad insertion, server side ad insertion. Why would I decide one or the other? And is it related to how the kind of content like FAST or OTT or on demand or IPTV that I'm trying to deliver into?
Yeah, server side versus client side, it all falls out of kind of the discussion around what is going to allow us to best optimize the ad experience based on the way that we're piecing it together. So some examples that I gave are the FAST environment versus the DAI environment. Within DAI, we really do need to cache ad creative client side in order to be able to execute fast enough to make that real-time ad swap happen. So client side is the obvious choice there. Now on the CTV side of things, we tend to lean more heavily towards server side ad insertion because a lot of logic can go on behind the scenes that our engineers don't have to worry about the amount of memory that exists on the device, how that memory is being used. And we can take care of a lot of the ad logic, the competitive separation, the deduplication, before those ads are stitched into a stream. So for us, it's really what's the most seamless way to deliver the ad. Most of the time in the CTV space, we're seeing that server side gives us the advantages that we're looking for. But there's some environments where client side is absolutely necessary, and that's okay too.
Natalie, what are you guys seeing at Vivo in terms of those decision points?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're taking a similar approach. It's understanding what type of content we're looking to distribute and where, right? And then what's the right structure set up to make it a seamless, flexible ad delivery where it's uninterrupted to the user, right? And I think for us, majority of the area, it's that server-side ad insertion because it allows for the control and the monetization. It allows the flexibility in your ad waterfall with direct and programmatic and inventory share and any other elements that you need to have in there to be able to have and be able to control the frequency all of those things while not slowing down from a delivery side to the endpoints. We lean more towards the server side ad insertion, but we take the same steps. It's what is the content, what's the platform, and what's the product,
Kristen, anything to add from Tastemates' perspective? I mean, how are you helping clients sort of understand this decision-making process?
Yeah, candidly, this isn't my lane, especially sitting on the programmatic side. But I did check in with our ad tech lead, who is brilliant and makes a lot of these decisions here at Tastemade, and his net was server side. Um, that when it comes to SSAI partners or ad server partners, server side for CTV, is for us what works best from a monetization perspective and control perspective. And some of the things he mentioned or he talked to me about why he recommends the server side. It's efficiency, it's cost, it's their underlying tech, it's the ongoing support, and really the maximizing of monetization. And that's why he would say I would definitely go with server side. But again, not really my lane or expertise, but that was our POV from the ad tech side at Tastemade.
No, and that's great. I mean, and sort of summarizing everything that you all have said. I mean, server side ad insertion is baked, right? So it's a really healthy way, very supported, very established, good foundation. And to Travis, you had mentioned the client side. Sort of having this use case of there is an option there. Client side provides you with more what I'll sort of say real time decision making, like because you're there in the player and you're making those decisions in the player, you can see, like you can react immediately to what is happening with the user's experience, and so it provides some benefits in some cases. But I think most everyone in the industry would probably say server side. It's generally what we're going to go with, and that leads us actually to our next question, which is to talk a little bit about fast channels, right? So fast is becoming hugely popular. It's exploding in growth, and okay, no wonder why, right? People want free TV, so they can get the TV they want. It's ad supported. I don't care. I'll watch an ad. There's so many research studies out there that say that subscribers will pay less for a subscription if they have to watch some ads. I mean, it's clear. There's a reason that Pluto, Tubi, YouTube, Viva, there's a reason these things have become really popular. Natalie, hoping you can start us out with this one, but delivering ads into what we'll sort of call pseudo live content, right? It's not really live per se, but it's on like an EPG, it's on like a schedule. That has different challenges than putting content into VOD. What are some of those challenges that brands face and that technology companies face, and how can they be mitigated to make sure that the ad experience is really good for those channels?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question because when I was thinking about this, we look at our platforms and we look at our delivery, and even though it's a live channel, it's pre-programmed content that's professionally produced and sort of with the structured ad breaks. And so from an ad serving perspective, it's similar to your on-demand platform in that way. So for us, I think it ties back to what we were talking about at the beginning. It's about managing the optimization of those pods. It's about managing frequency. It's about managing, industry category exclusivities within pods. It's about, optimizing the monetization of those pods. I also think it's about balancing ad pods and the number of ads in those pods, right? I think one thing that is important to think about is, the mix of 15s and 30s in there. 6-second ads are not the greatest experience in sort of this lean back experience for advertisers. And so I think, I would say, think of it, it's very much like that television experience. The 15s and 30s work well in this environment. And, the creative for this is that premium creative that you would run on a large screen television. That's the creative that we should be running here. And that's how we kind of look at it.
Travis, what are your thoughts? I mean, and you can expand a little bit, even if you want to, into purely live events, or what are some of these challenges to delivering ads effectively into these, sort of programmed experiences?
Yeah, so most fast content, I'll echo, is scheduled and pre-programmed. And while it might be a little bit of counterintuitive, that it actually gives us the ability to have more time to put together an ad pod properly, because you know exactly when the ad break is going to occur and the duration at which it's going to occur. And then you also know if someone is tuned into that channel and coming up on the ad break. So we'll start actually collecting ads for an ad break sometime seconds or minutes before the ad break occurs, and it gives us the time to collect the bids for the advertisers who are interested in participating in that ad break, and then applying all the logic that helps the ad pod come together in a way that is cohesive to the viewer: competitive separation, uh, uh, elimination of duplication of ads, those types of things that are critical to the ad experience. And that can all happen in advance when you know when the ad break is going to occur. And in the vast majority of fast environments, that's the case. You know exactly when the ad break is going to occur and whether or not you have a viewer who is tuned in who's likely to encounter the ad break.
Kristen, anything to add there?
Yeah, just thinking on some of the challenges that we face at Tastemade every day when it comes to inserting ads into live or fast formats. I think the biggest thing would be we work with so many different partners, that and the fragmentation often causes us issues. Let's putting together the ad pod, or for us navigating if something doesn't load correctly, where is the problem happening? And again, we work with close to 10 different distribution partners, and candidly some are better than others, and then we work with multiple SSAI partners, so there's a lot of different cooks in the kitchen for us, and where something can break down when it comes to an ad pod. And some partners do prefetching, like Travis mentioned, some do not, and that's really where for us, it gets very, very complex and can often lead to the issues we talked about earlier with ad errors and things of that nature. And it seems to just be getting more complex as we continue to grow in CTV. And I would say from the live fast perspective, that's the challenge for us as a publisher of what we're facing, and more too, we're seeing like Vizio or other distribution partners are creating their own SSAIs, so we're having to duplicate our own tech. We're having to deduplicate technology and add more, again, cooks to the kitchen. So that's one of the I would say that for us is the biggest challenge of really effectively putting together ad pods in the live fast environment.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. And you hit the nail on the head. It's complex, and it's getting more complex. It's actually not getting simpler. And part of that is a problem with the lack of standards, right? We talked a little bit about that, where you get a VPAID instead of a VAS, but some of the standards are kind of siloed, right? Some of them focus on ad formats and how ads are, the metadata around ads, and other standards are focusing on signaling, like SCUDdy 35 and SCUDdy 224, about how ads are delivered or signaled into true live streams. And so none of this stuff is really connected together. It's all just in little silos, and you have to work really hard to make sure it's all connected so that you have less errors, you have better quality ads, the ads are delivered the way they should be into the right kinds of channels, a fast channel, a VOD, or whatever. It takes a lot of coordination. We have a few minutes left. We have one audience question right now, and I want to get to this because it's actually a very interesting question. And then I have one more question that I want to end off with, kind of a around the horn kind of question thing. Okay, so the question we've got here is about standards. And like I said, there are standards for the signaling of ads into live content, right? So SCUDdy, SCUDdy 35, SCUDdy 224. The question around is there any work being done in the industry to develop standards or specs or anything about managing metadata and timing data, which is what those SCUDI standards are, to facilitate in-video product commerce interactivity, shoppable video. And I thought it was a really interesting question because I know that this is still like, people are still talking about clicking on video and buying things. Is there any movement in the industry, the whole advertising industry, to kind of put some standards around how that should be signaled in a live stream?
I'm sure that there are. I can tell you from Visio's perspective, we're not waiting on standards. We'll certainly consider adopting standards once they're in place, but we're full steam ahead on creating those type of interactive and shoppable experiences. We've rolled out some of those features already. We have what we refer to as our ITV engineering team, who's actively engaged in creating a Visio standard for how those types of units appear and are programmed on our devices. That's not a cross-device standard, and like I said, once there are viable cross-device standards, we'll certainly consider adopting them. But we don't want to be slowed down by the rollout of those type of standards. So we're just full steam ahead on our own.
Standards you take a while. Kristen, what are your thoughts?
I think it's an issue everyone knows is there. I haven't seen or heard of anyone really, grabbing the reins and taking a lead on creating standardization when it comes to metadata or, let's say, passing through content parameters. It's something we deal with daily. Buyers or brands, they want to see that content metadata coming through in the bid stream, and we have to implement it differently by different distribution partner, and that gets extremely challenging because that also goes back into how we're uploading our content internally here at Tastemade. So that lack of standardization, it really does cause issues for brands and buyers. And we've done some complex integrations, whether it be with Iris TV for contextual or Triple Lift. We work with them for advanced TV units. And I can tell you there's no standardization, there's no process, and we kind of have fun, approaching these hurdles, but if anyone is leading it, I haven't heard of it. And we're just trying to address it the best we can as a publisher, and make our inventory as valuable as we can to brands.
Natalie.
My answer is not going to be much different than the other two here on the call. I think there's a need for it because this landscape is vastly expanding, and I think we need that there, but we're taking the same approach. We're looking at interactive ads, sort of driving it on our own, working with the various distribution partners that we are on to set up the best execution for us to drive monetization and value across the board. And I think what you're finding with the answers is we're all taking it into our own hands to do what we need to do to build the best business out there. I do think there would be benefits to having some standards to help us.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, but to Travis's point, standards take a long time, not only to develop, but then to ratify. And by the time,
yes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And that's why our organization focuses on specs and guidelines. Standards in streaming video, by the time you've established them, people are like, we moved past that 3 years ago. Like, we have something better now. So it's understandable. Cool idea, but people are just going to get it done how they need to get it done now. So actually, we are out of time. So listen, I want to say thank you. We have approximately 5 minutes left. No, that was a while ago. Sorry. So we're all out of time. Listen, that was a great discussion. You all did a great job. Some really cool questions. Just the long and short of this, audience, is that, delivering ads in streaming video is complicated. It takes thought. Be thoughtful. be thoughtful about frequency, about quality, about where you're delivering it, about how you're delivering it, so that the ad experience is as good as the content experience. And your viewers have a wonderful experience with the brand and the ads as much as they do with the content they're watching. So with that said, everybody, thank you very much. Did a great job, and we'll see you sometime in some other panel, in some other show later on in the year. All right, everybody, take care.
Thank you all, that was great. So that wraps up this year's Stream TV Advertising Summit. We hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. As always, I'd like to close by thanking the sponsors for the session, Broadpeak and Vivo, and then for the whole show, TiVo, Broadpeak, Beachfront, Vivo, and Canoe Ventures. I'd also like to extend my thanks to all other speakers and to everyone at home tuning in. My name is Oliver Ward, your host, and on behalf of Fierce Video, thank you for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.